Okay, well, we have to step back a tiny bit to Nagoya COP10 when we agreed the big plan to save nature. There was a little bit of finished business because we had to work out then how we're going to finance it all. And it was agreed by everybody that we would work out how much it's all going to cost. Now, unfortunately, the world has changed a little bit since those 2 years ago. And with the economic crisis in Europe and so on, and actually elsewhere, of course, in the world, we have a new debate, which is it's a little bit difficult to increase the aid flows going from north to south. So the finance discussions right now are a little bit logjammed because we've got the discussion that, the developing countries, particularly the least developing countries, want to see more money. And it's true, they need more money. They need more money to implement those 20 targets, and the finance is one of those. Now, at the same time, the Europeans and the other parts of the developed world are saying, okay, we see that you need a bit more money, but there's got to be a whole new approach. And this would be IUCN's position as well. We need a whole new approach in terms of what we're calling resource mobilization. And there's a whole string of things we can do to bring more money into the system. And it is a lot of money, and we have made quite a lot of progress in working out exactly how much money. So the sorts of things that we're talking about are, for instance, green procurement policies. Now, what that means is that, governments around the world buy a lot of things. They buy a lot of stuff. And therefore, they've got a lot of buying power. And I imagine if all that buying power was green, that could have a great impact. And it actually puts money into the green system, if you like. Now, another one that was agreed in Nagoya would be to take ecosystem values and put them in national accounting. Now, this is quite a complicated subject, but if we can do that, we can get the sort of economic systems of countries working in a new way, such that money would flow in a different way, and you could actually incentivize the finance systems to flow such that you would avoid damaging biodiversity. Now, all this is complicated. Another one is payments for ecosystem services, which is a little bit of a frightening phrase, and I should stress that from IUCN's perspective, and I do want to stress this because it's controversial here, nature is priceless. In a sense, in one way, you cannot put a price on it, but if you do, if you like, as part of a sort of tool, you can give a payback to the people who are looking after nature. So we're very keen on that, and we're keen on seeing that go forward, but it's complicated, and we don't have enough really big examples yet to really prove to people that it can work. So those are just some of the examples that can bring about the flow of money in a new way.
Is there an issue that while all those examples seem excellent, the developing countries will say, just give us the cash that we asked for, give us the cash that you promised 2 years ago?
Well, they are saying that, and we understand why, of course, and I think actually they do need more money. They do need more money, and it can't just be more money for protected area funds, which is a good idea, but it's not enough. But even if with that, there could be 20% more money, but it still won't be enough to do the big job that needs to be done to put nature at the heart of the way we live now. Everything depends on nature, and actually the conservation community hasn't been terribly good in explaining that, and we need to get a lot better explaining just how much the whole life of the planet, not just the sort of wildlife, the species and so on, and the ecosystems, the habitats, but all human life depends on nature, and that's what we need to explain a little bit better.
It seems that sometimes at these kind of summits you have unlikely alliances developing which can maybe sway the negotiations in one way or the other. In Durban we had the EU and AOSIS and the sort of least developed countries. Is there anything similar, do you think, potentially happening like that here?
Well, I think at the end of week one, it's an interesting question, because I've just made an intervention in the plenary which says, we're 2 years into the decade. In 2 years' time, we'll be nearly halfway through. We have to get on the right train track now. So appealing to parties to realize just how important this is. So yes, let's continue the discussion about we need more money, and we would support that, but let's also pour oil on troubled waters about the other discussions which need to take place. Now, what's also happening here, and very interestingly, is a whole load of side events and other discussions, such as in the Rio Pavilion, showing really amazing case studies, but it's all a bit small. So what we need to do is to take these very small examples of solutions, where we're seeing solutions on the ground, and we are actually seeing them on the ground now, and scale them up. So I think actually the side events are playing, I think, a very good role, and I've become more of a fan of them than I was in previous COPs because I can really see the linkage here. And in some ways, that's where the leadership is coming now. That's where the excitement is, in good case studies which are taking place either with or without involvement of government. I mean, sometimes with the involvement of government. So we need to do more of this and scale it up because we know what to do. We have the toolkits, we have the knowledge. Conservation works is what IUCN would say. So let's do more, let's scale it up and multiply it.
And in terms of other issues that have been discussed this week, I think REDD+ has been on the agenda. Some countries were saying this isn't the right forum to discuss, this should be in the climate change forum, and biofuels too. How do you see those two particular topics, and is there anything else that you'd highlight from this first week and say, well look, you know, finance isn't going anywhere, but perhaps we can sort of smile as a result of this?
Yeah, well, most of the other items aren't so controversial. Finance is logjammed, but I'm not giving up hope. We never give up hope. I mean, in Nagoya, we never thought we'd get the strategic plan and the Nagoya Protocol and the resource mobilization. We did at the last minute, so we have to see. In terms of climate change, that is challenging because in the run-up to COP10, at the end of the international decade on the International Year of Biodiversity, I should say, there was a lot of talk about how the three Rio Conventions needed to speak to each other a lot more. And as one person put it to me the other day, there's a bit of a firewall between them now. And that is not good, because clearly they were born from the same stable. The three Rio Conventions came from the same place, and we all want to see more synergies. So that is a little bit of a problem. And I don't see that one being very easy to resolve. I don't think the conventions are not talking to each other. I know they are. I mean, I frequently see their three secretariats all working together. But so that does remain a challenge, because we know very well that nature has a huge role to play in relation to climate change. If we keep nature in her place, functioning fully, nature helps absorb all the carbon in the atmosphere. Well, not all of it, but a good degree of it, okay? If we take it away, we get the double whammy because we're releasing more CO2 into the atmosphere.
And on a final point, IUCN, very big organisation around the world. What sort of pressure, behind the scenes pressure, can you put on governments? What kind of leverage do you have on governments? I imagine the USA might be a different kettle of fish, but can you sort of poke a couple of delegates and sort of make a couple of suggestions?
Well, it's funny you should mention the USA, because we're very proud to say that the US is a member of IUCN, and we work with them very, very closely. And we're very, very glad that we do, because they remain very supportive of our work, albeit they're not a party to the CBD. You know, we wish they were, but they're not. But we still work with them, and they are here, and they watch everything. How does IUCN work? We work very much behind the scenes, influencing parties, talking to parties. Parties use our knowledge a great deal. The IUCN Red List of Threatened Species is used by everyone all around the world. We know that. And just before coming to meetings like this, we develop what we call positions on the various agenda items. And these are quite robust, scientifically underpinned opinions on how the agenda items ought to be taken, based on consultation with actually literally thousands of scientists around the world. So they tend to be very strong, and it's difficult to argue against them. And that sort of all feeds into this process, whether you notice it or not. You know, sometimes it's behind the scenes, sometimes the influencing takes place elsewhere. For instance, our World Conservation Congress, which just took place in South Korea, we were talking to parties, government members of IUCN, about what would happen here.